The Live Paint Bucket tool is one of the most efficient ways of adding color to your illustrations. Let me show you how it works on these basic examples here. Let's say this is the watermelon that we would like to add colors to. All we need to do is to select the Live Paint Bucket tool. K is the default shortcut for it. So when I select it, with this, I will be able to pick the swatch I would like to work with. So in this case, maybe that red color will work nicely. And notice that once I selected a swatch from the swatches panel, it's actually showing up above my cursor. And the cool thing is that I can use the left and right arrows on the keyboard to swap between the colors. I can even go up and down in rows within the swatches. So if we open up the panel, you can see exactly what happens when I press up and down. I'm going around there, and left and right, I can go between the ones next to each other. If I click anywhere within this object, Live Paint will be able to find the edges. And it's quite important to make sure that your lines are close up so you don't have gaps between them, because then it works much better. Although even with gaps, it can work up to a certain limitation, which I'm going to explain soon. But whenever I use this tool, I like to also go to the View menu and choose Hide Edges. Notice I even define this as a custom shortcut. I use F3, function key 3, to hide and show them again, because they are normally useful, but when it comes to using the Live Paint Bucket, there's just too much details to see actually what you're doing. As a reminder, if you want to do custom shortcuts, you can go to Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts. So that's where you can define it. Now let's move on. I'm going to press right arrow once to get that darker shade of red, and I'm going to apply that on the side. Then I will use a brighter shade, maybe even a yellow, like that. Apply that here. And then I use a slightly darker one again for the side. So that was very quick and easy to do. So let's try the same technique with the hat. First of all, I will have to make my edges visible again. I'm going to use my shortcut, but remember it is the Show Edges option from the View menu. That way I can see what is currently selected. And I use V on the keyboard to switch onto the other object, so with the selection tool. Then K for the Paint Bucket tool, and then I'm going to select another color. And once again, I will hide my edges before I apply them. Now if I click anywhere here, it will start adding this color, and maybe I can add a little bit brighter one there. And for the ribbon, I will probably pick something more bright, like this orange, and then apply it maybe slightly darker around here. So once again, that was very quick and easy to do. Now let's see what happens with our layers. So when I select the melon, I can go up into the layers and open up that group within which we find a Live Paint group. When I open that up again, we will see a lot of different objects inside, and we don't actually see the color anywhere. So they are all the black and white outlines. Let's see the hat. If I open up the hat, once again we have the Live Paint group within which we have all the outlines, but the colors you won't find here. That is because it is a temporary application of colors which Illustrator calculated based on the outlines that you have in the illustration. They are not actual shapes with fill colors. If you want to turn it into a shape, what you need to do is to expand it. That's something we've already learned about. That's Object, Expand, and then I would just click OK here, so it can use all of these options. And now if I look at my group, I will find both the outlines, these black lines, and then also the filled colors. Sometimes I prefer to expand what I do with Live Paint, but it can also be useful to keep it in that state. It really depends on the workflow and how you incorporate the Live Paint Bucket to your own process. It is just good to know that once you expanded a Live Paint, you can't actually use it the same way. So what you would have to do here is to individually change these colors around. So if I wanted to make this brighter or a darker shade, let's say, I would have to do that individually. So I wouldn't use the Live Paint Bucket anymore. If you want to continue amending colors in an already existing Live Paint group, I would recommend to use this tool called Live Paint Selection tool, with which you can click on a certain area within the Live Paint group, and then you can alter the color there. So if I wanted this to be darker or brighter, I can do that easily. And if I selected multiple areas, I can use recolor artwork, which we've learned about in the previous video. Now let me show you another interesting thing. If I duplicate a Live Paint object, and let's say I move this in the background, so I use the shortcut Command Shift or Control Shift square bracket. It went all the way in the background, and I'm going to make it slightly smaller and on a bit of an angle, something like that. So now we have two separate Live Paint groups. If I select one of them, of course I can make changes to the colors on that object, but I can't really select the other object easily. So if I select both of these Live Paint groups, I actually get this option up here called Merge Live Paint. If I click on that, I will get this warning, but I can just click on Continue. And what actually happened is that now these two objects are joined together into one combined Live Paint group. Now if I use the tool and I hide the edges, we can see if we want to start changing the colors, we can do that. But it is important that because these two objects are in one Live Paint group now, you can see that although that line is not visible and it's in the background, it's still affecting the shape in the front. So I would have to fill this a couple of additional times until it's actually completely filled in the front shape. So it's not necessarily always helping to merge Live Paints together, but in certain cases it's going to speed up the way you work. And just to give you an even simpler example, let me draw two circles here on top of each other, and I'm going to use the Live Paint bucket on them. So the intersection of these shapes are actually not a shape, but if once I click on it, the Live Paint will recognize that as an outline because of the overlapping parts of these two circles. And also I can colorize each of these areas differently. So if I choose maybe another color for the top, you can see although it's only two shapes, we have three different colors. And if I use the Live Paint Selection tool, I can select certain areas and I can change their color easily. But if I use the Selection tool and double click on this object, because it's a group, we can actually isolate it and go inside it, then I have the option to move these objects around. And that's the really cool thing, that while it is in a Live Paint group, it will recognize the changes that you do, but still be able to maintain the different colors that we applied until I move them too far away from each other, and then that intersection color is gone. Of course, I can reapply it, but it couldn't find any more that area that was defined as a third color in this case. So let me just undo this step until we have it back again, and I'm going to double click outside to exit the isolation mode. Now what I would like you to do to practice using the Live Paint bucket is to colorize this illustration which is provided, or find something similar to this and explore ways how you can work with this tool. In the next video, we will look at another very useful feature called Envelope Distort.